3 days passed aboard the Void Runner. Grathor performed his duties perfectly. He checked every security system twice. He ran combat drills. He memorized every inch of the ship. This was what warriors did, but something had changed. The massive Rexian found himself avoiding the kitchen. When mealtimes came, he ate quickly and left. He told himself it was because he had work to do. Important security work. The truth sat heavy in his chest like a stone. The human chef made him uncomfortable. Him. Grathor of the Rexian clans. Warrior who feared nothing. On the fourth morning, Grathor woke earlier than usual. His sleep had been restless, filled with strange dreams. He rose and walked the corridors, trying to clear his mind. The ship was completely silent. Everyone else still slept except one person. Light spilled from the kitchen doorway. Grathor heard the now familiar sound. Shing, 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 the knife being sharpened. Always that sound, he should walk away, return to his quarters. But something drew him forward, some instinct that said he needed to understand this human, to figure out why his ancient predator senses kept screaming warnings. Grathor stepped into the doorway and watched. Taehyun sat on a stool at the prep table. A whetstone lay before him. In his hands he held a chef's knife, running it along the stone in smooth, even strokes. His face was blank. Not peaceful, not anything, just empty. Like he had gone somewhere else in his mind while his hands worked by memory. The warrior's eyes traced the human's movements. Every stroke was identical to the last. Perfect angle. Perfect pressure. No variation. It was hypnotic and disturbing at the same time. Taehyun finished with one knife and picked up another. He checked the blade's edge, found it wanting, and began the sharpening process again. Shing, shing, shing. Do you ever sleep? Grathor asked. The human didn't startle. He simply paused, looked up, and met the warrior's gaze. I sleep enough. It is 4 hours before the morning cycle. Yes, that was all. No explanation. No apology. Just a simple acknowledgement. Grathor entered the kitchen fully, his bulk making the space feel smaller. You sharpen your blades every day. Yes, why? They cannot dull so quickly. Taehyun set down the knife carefully. A blade can always be sharper, and the practice is important. Keeping your tools maintained is how you survive. Survive cooking? Grathor asked, a hint of mockery in his voice. Survive anything, Taehyun replied without emotion. The human stood and walked to his knife wall. He ran his fingers along the handles, checking each one. Most people don't respect blades. They think they're just kitchen tools. They get careless. That's when accidents happen. You speak like a warrior speaking of weapons, Grathor observed, do I? Taehyun selected a large blade and examined it closely. Maybe warriors and chefs aren't so different. Both need precision. Both need to understand their tools completely. Both need discipline. He turned to face the massive alien. For the first time, Grathor saw something in the human's eyes. Not fear, not aggression, just a calm, assessing look. Like he was evaluating, measuring. In your warrior culture, Taehyun said, you probably train from childhood. You practice the same moves thousands of times until they're instinct, until you don't have to think. Your body just knows what to do. This is true, Grathor admitted. It's the same with this. Taehyun gestured to his knives. I've made tens of thousands of cuts, broken down thousands of animals. My hands know what to do before my brain tells them. Muscle memory. He returned to his work, selecting a new piece of meat from the cooling unit. The difference is I learned to cut things apart to feed people. But the skill, he made a precise cut through the meat. The skill itself doesn't know the difference. Something about those words made Grathor's blood run cold. The human wasn't threatening him, wasn't boasting. He was simply stating a fact. A blade cutting meat or cutting an enemy used the same techniques. The same precision, the same trained instincts. You are a strange human, Grathor said quietly. Am I? Taehyun didn't look up from his work. Or am I just honest about what I am? The warrior had no answer to that. Over the following days, Grathor found himself watching the human chef more often. He told himself it was security protocol, observing all crew members for unusual behavior. But he knew the truth. He was trying to understand. He watched Taehyun work through a lunch rush preparing meals for the entire crew. The human's hands never stopped moving. Cut, season, cook, plate, everything timed perfectly. Multiple dishes at once, but never confused, never rushed. Controlled chaos. He watched Tae-hyun clean his workspace after meals. Everything had a place. Everything was organized with military precision. The human touched each tool before storing it, like checking soldiers before dismissal. He watched Tae-hyun sharpen his knives. Always in the early morning. Always the same ritual. The sound that had begun to haunt Grathor's dreams. Shing, shing, shing. One evening, the engineer Dae-jung made a mistake. He was helping carry supplies to the kitchen and dropped a box. It crashed to the floor, making a sound like an explosion in the quiet corridor. Grathor jumped slightly, his warrior reflexes kicking in. He spun, claws out, ready for attack. Tae-hyun, who had been closer to the noise, didn't move at all. He simply glanced at the fallen box, then back to his prep work. His hands hadn't even paused in their cutting motion. "Sorry," Dae-jung called out, scrambling to pick up the scattered supplies. "It's fine," Tae-hyun said calmly. "Just put the cans on the counter." Grathor stared. How had the human not reacted? Even veteran warriors showed some startled reflex to unexpected loud noises. It was basic survival instinct. But Tae-hyun had barely acknowledged it. That night, Grathor lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept returning to the human chef, to those calm eyes, those steady hands. That endless collection of blades kept perfectly sharp. He thought about his own species. The Vrexians were born predators. They had claws, fangs, armor like scales. They were built to kill. That's why they feared nothing. They were the danger. But humans? Humans were small, soft skin that tore easily. No natural weapons, no armor. They should be prey species. Easy victims in the cruel universe. So why did this one human make him feel like he was the prey? Grathor rolled over, trying to sleep. But his mind wouldn't quiet. He kept seeing Tae-hyun's hands moving over those knives. The way he touched them like old companions. The absolute confidence in every motion. The Vrexian warrior had boasted that he feared nothing. And it was true. He didn't fear. Fear was bred out of his people long ago. But something else had appeared in its place. Something he didn't have a word for. A sense that he was sharing a ship with something he didn't fully understand. Something that looked harmless but might be very, very dangerous. In the darkness of his quarters, Grathor's claws flexed unconsciously. An old instinct from before his species became apex predators. From when they were still prey themselves. Learning to recognize threats that didn't announce themselves with roars or shows of force. Threats that stayed quiet and sharp, waiting for the perfect moment. The warrior closed his eyes and tried to ignore the sound he kept imagining. The sound that had become the soundtrack of his unease. Shing, shing, shing. The endless sharpening of blades in a quiet kitchen, performed by a human who moved like violence, was just another form of cooking, and both were equally natural to his practiced hands. Grathor finally slept, but his dreams were troubled. He dreamed of predators and prey, and of humans who smiled while holding knives, and of the growing certainty that the universe might have gotten it wrong about which species should be feared. Grathor stood in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. They stretched endlessly before the ship, cold and distant. He had been standing there for an hour, lost in thought. "You've been avoiding the mess hall," a voice said behind him. He turned. Yijin entered the observation deck, carrying 2 cups of something hot. She offered one to him. Grathor took it, sniffing cautiously. Some kind of human beverage. "I am not avoiding anything," he said, but the words sounded weak even to him. Yijin smiled and sat down on the bench by the viewport. "I've been on this ship for 2 years. I know what avoiding looks like." She sipped her drink. "It's Tae-hyun, isn't it?" Grathor's scales rippled with irritation. "I do not fear a food preparer." "I didn't say you feared him," Hyejin replied gently. "I said you were avoiding him. There's a difference." The warrior was silent for a long moment. Then he sat down beside her, the bench creaking under his weight. "He makes me uncomfortable. I cannot explain it. My instincts warn me about him, but he has done nothing threatening. He is small, weak, human." "Weak?" Hyejin laughed. "Is that what you think?" "Compared to Vrexians, yes. Compared to most species, yes. Humans have no claws, no fangs, no armor. You are prey species." Hyejin set down her cup. "Do you know anything about Earth? About human history? Your homeworld? Only that your people spread across the galaxy quickly. That you adapt well. Nothing more." "Then let me teach you something," Hyejin said. Something important about humans. About why your instincts might be smarter than you think. She pulled out a small tablet and began searching through files. Humans didn't evolve as apex predators like your people. You're right about that. We didn't have claws or fangs or natural armor. In fact, we were pretty pathetic compared to the other predators on our world. Then how did you survive? Grathor asked. We ran, Hyojin said simply. We became persistence hunters. We couldn't run fast for short distances. But we could run forever. We would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until they collapsed from exhaustion. We literally hunted by outlasting everything else. She showed him images on the tablet. Ancient humans running across plains following animal tracks. We evolved to sweat, to cool ourselves while running. Most animals can't do that. They overheat. We don't, we just keep going. And going, and going. Grathor stared at the images. That is disturbing. It gets better, Hyojin said with a dark smile. We weren't the strongest, so we made tools. And humans got very good at making tools, especially cutting tools. She pulled up more images. Stone blades, metal knives, swords, all throughout human history. Humans have been making blades for over 2 million years. We used them to hunt, to butcher, to eat, and yes, to fight. Many species use tools, Grathor argued. True, but humans are different. We didn't just use tools. We became obsessed with them, perfecting them. We made cutting things into an art form. She showed him pictures of ancient human artwork, paintings and statues of people with weapons and knives. In almost every human culture across all of history, blade skill was respected, honored, sometimes worshipped. Grathor's discomfort grew. What does this have to do with your chef? Everything, Hyojin said. She leaned forward. Humans developed 2 uses for blades, cooking and fighting. And here's the thing. The skills are almost identical. The precision, the practice, the understanding of angles and force. A master chef uses the same techniques as a master fighter, because at the core, both are about controlled violence. She pulled up a new file. Taehyun Kim served 12 years in the human colonial marines, specialist in close quarters combat, multiple commendations, expert rating with edged weapons. She looked at Grathor. He was a soldier before he was a chef. A very good soldier. The warrior felt his blood chill. He never mentioned this. Why would he? He's a chef now, he cooks. He feeds the crew. His military service ended 5 years ago. Hyojin smiled sadly. But you know how it is. That kind of training doesn't just go away. Those instincts don't fade. He can be a chef and still remember exactly how to kill someone with a knife in 3 seconds. Grathor stood up, pacing. Then why is he here? Why does a trained killer work as a ship's cook? Maybe he got tired of killing. Maybe he wanted to create instead of destroy. Maybe he found peace in using those same skills for something positive. Hyojin shrugged. I never asked. It's not my business. But I'll tell you this. I'm glad he's on our side. She stood and walked to the viewport. You asked me about humans being weak. Let me tell you something about my species. We're not strong like you. We're not fast. We don't have natural weapons. But we have 2 things that make us dangerous. What things? Grathor asked. Adaptability and patience. Hyojin turned to face him. Humans can adapt to anything. Any environment. Any situation. We find a way to survive. And patience? We invented waiting. We can hold a grudge for generations. We can plan for decades. We can outlast anything. She walked to the door, then paused. Your people evolved to be fearless. That's impressive. But humans evolved to be persistent. We're the species that doesn't give up. Ever. We'll chase you across the universe if we have to. We'll wait 100 years for revenge if necessary. And we'll do it all while smiling and offering you dinner. Hyojin left, leaving Grathor alone with his thoughts. The warrior sat down again, processing everything. He pulled up the ship's crew files on his own tablet. Found Taehyun's record, the parts that were public anyway. Military service, multiple deployments. Awards. Medical records showing scars and injuries that told stories of violence survived. Then 5 years of working as a chef on various ships. Excellent reviews from every captain. Quiet, one report said. Keeps to himself. Makes excellent food. No problems, no problems. Because why would there be? Taehyun did his job perfectly. Just like he probably did his soldier job perfectly. Just like he sharpened his knives perfectly. Perfectly. Grathor thought about his own people's history. Phyrexians were born as apex predators. They never had to hunt or struggle. They were always the strongest. Fear was useless to them, so evolution removed it. But humans were weak prey that refused to die. They were food that learned to fight back. They were victims that became hunters through sheer stubborn persistence. They lost their fangs and claws somewhere in evolution, so they made new ones, better ones, sharper ones, and they got very, very good at using them. The warrior remembered watching Tae-hyun work, those calm eyes, those steady hands, the way he touched his knives like they were part of his body, the absolute lack of hesitation or doubt. That wasn't the behavior of prey. That was the behavior of a predator so confident in its abilities that it didn't need to show off, didn't need to roar or threaten. It just existed, quietly sharp, waiting. Humans didn't conquer fear. They weaponized patience instead. Grathor understood now. His instincts weren't warning him that Tae-hyun was dangerous because he was threatening. They were warning him because the human was competent. Lethally, quietly competent. The kind of competent that came from thousands of hours of practice. From muscle memory trained in violence and repurposed for cooking. But the muscle memory didn't forget. The skills didn't vanish. They just waited, patient as only humans could be, ready to surface if needed. The warrior stood and walked to the viewport. Outside stars rushed past. Inside, a human chef sharpened knives in a quiet kitchen, and Grathor finally admitted a truth to himself. He didn't fear Tae-hyun. Fear was impossible for him. But respect? Understanding that this small, soft human was dangerous in ways the warrior's species had never needed to be? That he could manage. That night, Grathor returned to the mess hall for dinner. He watched Tae-hyun serve food with the same calm precision. The human nodded to him, expression unchanged. Just a chef doing his job. But now Grathor saw the full picture. The soldier hiding behind the apron. The fighter who chose to feed instead of kill. The predator who learned patience so deep it looked like peace. Humans, he realized, were the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Not because they were strong, but because they were weak and survived anyway, because they turned disadvantages into weapons, because they never ever gave up. And the scariest ones were like Tae-hyun, the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who could kill you but chose to make you dinner instead. Grathor ate his meal slowly, tasting it for the first time. It was delicious, perfectly prepared, every element balanced. Of course it was. Tae-hyun did everything perfectly. That was what made him dangerous. The alarm screamed through the Void Runner like a wounded animal. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Grathor was on his feet instantly, combat instincts taking over. Pirates! Captain Velmos's voice crackled over the ship's speakers. All crew to defensive positions. They're boarding us! Grathor grabbed his weapons and ran to the cargo bay. This was what he was hired for. What he was born for. His blood sang with the promise of battle. Finally, he could do what Phyrexians did best. The cargo bay doors had been blown open. 3 pirate vessels had attached to the ship like parasites. Boarding ramps extended and armed figures poured through. The pirates were a mixed bunch. Grathor saw Krell, the armored reptilians, Hask, the 4-armed raiders, even a few rogue Phyrexians, outcasts from the clans. All of them carried weapons. All of them looked hungry for violence and loot. Come then, Grathor roared, charging forward. Face a true warrior. He crashed into the first wave like a red avalanche. His claws ripped through armor. His jaws closed on a Krell's arm, tearing it free. A Hask shot at him, the plasma bolt burning his shoulder, but Grathor felt no pain. Only the joy of battle. He fought the way his ancestors taught him. Pure aggression. Overwhelming force. A Phyrexian in full combat fury was worth 10 normal soldiers. He proved it now, tossing bodies aside, roaring his clan's battle cry. But there were too many pirates. They kept coming. And they had a plan. Split up. One pirate captain shouted, "Get to the bridge. Get to the cargo, move." Half the boarding party stayed to fight Grathor. The other half scattered into the ship's corridors. The warrior tried to chase them, but the pirates in front of him pressed their attack. They kept him busy, kept him contained. Security breach on deck 2. The ship's computer announced. Security breach on deck 3. Grathor snarled in frustration. He was winning his fight but losing the battle. The pirates were getting deeper into the ship. On the bridge, Captain Velmos sealed the door and grabbed a weapon. Hijin did the same, her face pale but determined. How long until the doors fail? She asked. 5 minutes, maybe less, the captain replied. Where's Daejung? Engineering. He's trying to get the engines back online. Somewhere in the ship, 3 pirates moved through Deck 2. They were Hask, all 4 arms carrying weapons. Their leader checked a scanner. Life signs ahead. Someone's hiding in the galley section. They moved quickly, opening doors, searching rooms. When they reached the kitchen, they kicked the door open hard. Inside, Heejin stood pressed against the wall unarmed. She had been checking on supplies when the attack started. Now she was trapped, far from the bridge, far from help. The 3 pirates entered, weapons pointed at her. Their leader laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. Little human. Nowhere to run. Please, Heejin said, her voice shaking. I'm just the navigator. I don't have anything valuable. Maybe we'll keep you anyway, the pirate said. Hostages are always useful. They advanced on her, spreading out to block any escape. Heejin backed up against the counter, genuinely afraid now. Behind the pirates, the kitchen's back door opened silently. Nobody noticed. The pirates were focused on their prey, eager for an easy catch. Taehyun stepped out from the cold storage room. He wore his chef's jacket, white and clean. In his right hand, he held a knife. Not a massive weapon. Not a sword or a combat blade. Just a standard chef's knife, about 8 inches long. The kind he used every day to cut vegetables. That's enough, Taehyun said quietly. The pirates spun around. For a moment, they just stared. Then all 3 started laughing. A cook, the leader wheezed. A food servant with a kitchen knife. This is the help she gets? Another pirate said. The universe must hate you, human. Taehyun didn't respond. He just stood there, knife held loosely in his hand. His face showed nothing. No fear, no anger. Nothing at all. The lead pirate raised his weapon. Drop the knife, cook, or we'll drop you. Taehyun moved. Later, Heejin would try to describe what happened. She would fail. The human mind wasn't built to process that kind of speed, that kind of precision. Taehyun covered the distance in less than a second. The knife flashed, catching the light. The lead pirate's weapon clattered to the floor, followed by the 3 fingers that had been holding it. The pirate didn't even have time to scream before Taehyun's elbow hit his throat, crushing his windpipe. The second pirate fired wildly. The shot went wide. Taehyun was already past him, knife moving in a tight arc. The pirate made a gurgling sound and fell. The third pirate had 4 arms and used all of them trying to grab the human. Taehyun ducked under the first pair, deflected the second pair, and drove his knife up under the pirate's rib cage. The blade went in perfectly angled to find the heart. The pirate dropped like a puppet with cut strings. From start to finish, the entire fight lasted maybe 5 seconds. 3 armed pirates neutralized. Taehyun stood among the bodies, breathing normally. Not even winded. His knife was dark with blood, but his hands were steady. He wiped the blade clean on one pirate's jacket, then looked at Heejin. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. Her eyes were wide with shock. Good, stay here. Lock the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone except me or the captain. His voice was calm, flat, like he had just given her instructions for preparing rice instead of describing survival protocols. After killing 3 people, Taehyun, she managed to say, I know, stay here. I need to check the rest of the deck. He walked toward the door, then paused. This knife is contaminated now. I'll need to sanitize it properly, maybe replace it. He said it like he was thinking out loud, like the knife was his biggest concern. Then he was gone, moving into the corridor. Grathor finally broke through the pirate forces in the cargo bay. Bodies lay scattered around him. His scales were burned and cut, but he barely noticed. He ran toward the interior of the ship, following the sounds of weapons fire. He heard a scream from Deck 2, then another, then silence. The warrior ran faster, claws scraping on the metal floor. He burst into the corridor just in time to see something he would remember for the rest of his life. 4 pirates were firing down the hallway. They were panicked, shooting at something Grathor couldn't see. Then one pirate stopped, looked down at his chest where a small knife protruded, and fell. Taehyun emerged from a side corridor. He moved like water flowing, impossible to pin down. Another pirate tried to aim at him. The knife was suddenly in Taehyun's hand again, then it was in the pirate's throat. Had the human thrown it? Pulled it back? Grathor couldn't tell. The remaining 2 pirates ran. Taehyun let them go, bending down to retrieve his blade from the fallen pirate. He cleaned it carefully, then stood. That's when he saw Grathor. The two stared at each other. The massive warrior, covered in blood and burns. The small human, his white chef's jacket now stained red, holding a single kitchen knife. "The bridge is secure," Taehyun said. "I checked. Heejin is safe in the kitchen. I think that's all of them on this deck." "You killed them all?" Grathor asked. "Not all, some ran. The ones who didn't—" Taehyun looked down at his knife. "Yes, with that, just that knife?" "It's a good knife," Taehyun said simply. "Sharp, well-balanced. I've had it for years." Grathor's mind struggled to process what he had witnessed. This was the quiet chef, the man who made breakfast, who sharpened his knives in the early morning, who said almost nothing but what Grathor had just seen. That wasn't cooking. That was art. Deadly, efficient, perfect art. "Your heart," Grathor said, his predator senses reading the human's body. "It's barely elevated." "Fighting is like cooking," Taehyun replied. "Once you've practiced enough, it's just muscle memory. Your body does what it's trained to do." He paused. "The difference is, in a kitchen, you're creating something. In a fight, you're just stopping threats." He walked past Grathor toward the kitchen. "I need to check on Heejin. And I need a new jacket. This one is ruined." The warrior watched him go. The human moved with the same calm, measured pace as always, like he had just finished making dinner instead of killing 6 pirates in close combat. Around them, the ship's alarms finally stopped. The pirates who weren't dead had fled back to their ships. The Void Runner had survived. But Grathor felt like his understanding of the universe had fundamentally changed. He had seen true warriors, had fought alongside legendary killers, had witnessed battles that would become stories, but he had never seen anything like Taehyun, the human who killed without anger, who fought without passion, who turned violence into a craft as refined as his cooking, the chef who didn't need to boast about being dangerous, who let his actions speak in the clearest possible language, the language of a blade, wielded by hands that had practiced for thousands of hours, hands that knew exactly where to cut, whether the target was meat on a cutting board or an enemy's vital organs. Grathor had boasted that he feared nothing. And it was still true, but now he knew something else. The most dangerous beings in the universe were the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who looked harmless until the moment they absolutely weren't, the ones like Taehyun, who could kill you while barely raising his heart rate, then return to making dinner like nothing had happened, because to him maybe nothing had happened, just another problem solved, just another task completed with the same efficiency he brought to everything. Yai. The Void Runner drifted in space, engines damaged but functional. The pirates were gone, their ships disappeared into the void. The crew spent hours securing the ship, treating injuries and cleaning up the aftermath of the battle. Grathor sat in the medical bay, letting the ship's doctor treat his wounds. Burns covered his shoulders. Deep cuts marked his arms and chest, but he barely felt them. His mind was elsewhere, replaying what he had witnessed. "You fought well," Captain Velmos said, entering the medical bay. The insectoid captain looked tired. "We would have lost the cargo bay without you." "I did my job," Grathor replied. "But I was not the only one fighting." "No," the captain agreed. "Taehyun saved at least 6 crew members, maybe more. The pirates who got into the interior corridors. He stopped them all." Velmos clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "I knew he was former military. I did not know he was that skilled." "None of us did," Grathor said quietly. After the doctor finished, Grathor walked through the ship. Crew members nodded to him with respect. He had proven his worth in battle. This felt normal, expected. But when he passed through the common areas, he noticed something else. Crew members speaking about Taehyun in hushed, almost reverent tones. The quiet chef had become something else in their eyes. A protector, a guardian who appeared when needed. Some of them seemed nervous about it. Others seemed grateful. All of them were processing the revelation that the person who made their meals could kill them just as efficiently. Grathor found Heejin in her quarters. She looked up when he entered, her eyes still showing hints of shock. "Are you well?" he asked. "Physically, yes. Mentally?" She laughed without humor. "I watched Taehyun kill 3 pirates in 5 seconds. With a kitchen knife. I've worked with him for 2 years and I had no idea he could do that." "You knew he was military." "Knowing and seeing are different things," Heejin said. She stood and walked to her window. He was so calm, Grathor. That's what scared me most. Not the violence. The calmness. Like he was following a recipe instead of fighting for our lives. The warrior understood. He felt the same strange fear. Not of Tae-hyun specifically, but of what the human represented. A whole species that could switch between peace and violence with no transition. No warning. Where is he now? Grathor asked. Where do you think? The kitchen. Making dinner. Because apparently attempted murder makes you hungry. She shook her head. He told me we all need to eat. That traumatic stress is worse on an empty stomach. Then he went to cook. Of course he did. Grathor left and made his way to the galley. He could smell food before he arrived. Something rich and savory. His stomach growled despite everything. The kitchen door was open. Inside, Tae-hyun worked at his usual station. He had changed into a clean white jacket. His hair was tied back neatly. Everything looked exactly as it always did. Except the human moved with absolute precision even by his standards. Every motion deliberate. Every cut exact. Like he was trying to prove to himself that he could still create after destroying. Grathor watched for a moment, then entered. I came to speak with you. Tae-hyun nodded without looking up. I'm making stew. It'll be ready in an hour. The crew needs something warm and filling. You killed at least 6 pirates today, Grathor said directly. Perhaps more. 7, Tae-hyun corrected, still focused on his prep work. 7 confirmed. 2 others might survive their injuries if their ships have good medical facilities. He paused. I tried to avoid lethal force when possible, but most of them didn't give me that option. The warrior stepped closer. You fought like a trained killer. I was a trained killer, Tae-hyun replied simply. He finally looked up, meeting Grathor's eyes. For 12 years. That was my job. My purpose. I was good at it. And now? Now I cook. Tae-hyun returned to chopping vegetables. I prefer this. Creating instead of destroying. Feeding instead of fighting. It feels better. More right. But you can still fight, Grathor observed. Yes, the training doesn't fade. The muscle memory stays. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you learn, you never fully forget. He set down his knife carefully, but choosing not to use those skills unless necessary? That's the hard part. That takes real discipline. Grathor was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he said, When I first joined this ship, I boasted that I feared nothing. I told everyone that my people had conquered fear. I remember, Tae-hyun said. I spoke like a fool. The warrior's voice was heavy with new understanding. I thought fearlessness made me strong, made me a great warrior. But today I learned something. What did you learn? That fear has purpose. That respecting danger keeps you alive. That the strongest warriors are not those who feel nothing, but those who feel everything and fight anyway. Grathor looked at the human. You were afraid today, it wasn't a question. But Tae-hyun answered anyway. Yes, I'm afraid every time. Fear is the body's warning system. It tells you when something is dangerous. Only an idiot ignores that. But you still fought, because Hee-jin needed help. Because the crew needed protection. Because sometimes you have to be afraid and do it anyway. Tae-hyun picked up his knife again, examining it. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. My instructors taught me that in basic training. Grathor felt something shift in his chest, an old belief crumbling, replaced by something new, something better. I have spent my life being proud of feeling nothing, he said slowly. But you feel everything and still do what needs to be done. That is true strength, maybe, Tae-hyun said. Or maybe it's just being human. We're a species that was prey for millions of years. We learned to be afraid. But we also learned that being afraid doesn't mean being helpless. He started cutting again, his movements smooth. We adapted. We created tools. We developed skills. We turned our weaknesses into strengths. Your knives, Grathor said, understanding dawning. You maintain them so carefully. You practice with them every day, because they are your teeth and claws. Yes, Tae-hyun gestured to the knife wall. Humans don't have natural weapons. So we made our own, and we got very, very good at using them. For cooking. For survival. For whatever we need. The warrior approached the knife wall, studying the blades more carefully now. Each one was different. Each one had a specific purpose, but all of them were perfectly maintained. Sharp. Ready. You could kill me with any of these, Grathor said. I could, Tae-hyun agreed without boasting. But I won't because you're not a threat. You're a crew member, a colleague, maybe even a friend. Friend, Grathor repeated the word. Yes, I would like that. Taehyun smiled slightly. It was small, barely visible, but genuine. Good, then you can help me with dinner. Ever cut vegetables before? I'm a warrior. I do not prepare food. Then you'll learn something new today. Taehyun handed him a knife and a cutting board. Start with these carrots. Cut them into even pieces about this size. He demonstrated. Use smooth, controlled motions. Let the blade do the work. Grathor took the knife awkwardly. It felt strange in his claws, which were designed for fighting, not precision cutting. He pressed down on a carrot and it rolled away. Like this, Taehyun said patiently. He positioned Grathor's hand correctly, showed him how to hold the carrot. Control, not force. Cooking is about control. The warrior tried again. This time the carrot cut cleanly. Not perfectly, but better. Good, Taehyun said. Keep practicing. You'll get better. They worked in silence for a while, two very different beings sharing a kitchen. Grathor, the massive predator warrior, struggling to cut vegetables with the same precision he used in combat. Taehyun, the small human, moving with effortless grace born of countless hours of practice. Why do you sharpen your knives so often? Grathor asked after a while. Discipline, Taehyun replied, and meditation. The repetition helps me think, helps me remember who I am and who I want to be. When you sharpen a blade, you're literally shaping it, making it what you need it to be. He paused. I like the metaphor. Shaping yourself, Grathor said, understanding. You shape yourself every morning, reminding yourself to be the chef, not the soldier. Exactly. The warrior continued cutting, his movements slowly improving. In my culture, we value strength and fearlessness. But I think we miss something important. We miss the value of choice, of discipline, of being able to be dangerous but choosing peace. That's wisdom, Taehyun said. Real strength is having power and not using it. Anyone can destroy. Creation takes real skill. Grathor looked at his poorly cut vegetables, then at Taehyun's perfect prep work. I have much to learn. We all do. That's what makes life interesting. Taehyun checked his stew, adjusting the heat. Tell me about your people's food. What do Vrexians eat? And just like that, the conversation shifted. From fighting and fear to food and culture. Two warriors from different worlds sharing a kitchen and stories. When dinner was ready, the crew gathered in the mess hall. They ate together, processing the day's trauma through the simple act of sharing a meal. The stew was delicious, warm and filling, exactly what they needed. Grathor sat with his bowl, watching Taehyun serve food to crew members. The human moved through the room with quiet efficiency, making sure everyone had enough, that everyone was cared for. This was his battlefield now. The kitchen. The mess hall. Fighting hunger instead of enemies. Creating comfort instead of chaos.